Hello, Melissa Crook here on another Empowerment Tuesday on this last day of June, not just Tuesday of June, day of June. So, welcome to it. We are halfway through 2026, if you can believe it. This month on these Empowerment Tuesday conversations on the Field podcast, I'm Melissa Crook, your host, by the way. We have been talking about different ways that we communicate, the ways that are healthy, the ways that are unhealthy, that we can unlearn and relearn healthier ways of communicating, more honest ways of communicating, a reflection of how we actually want to carry ourselves and communicate with people versus maybe things that we've learned along the way that are harmful at times in terms of how people receive us and experience us. And many of it is things that we learned while we were young, things that were modeled to us, cultural narratives. There's so many things that go into it. So we've spent a lot of time talking about not saying I'm sorry anymore when an apology from us isn't necessary, and what is other language we can use. We've talked about over-explaining, and we'll get more into that today because over-explaining and saying I'm sorry can become a factor in today's conversation that we're going to be having when we talk about communicating our boundaries and our expectations kindly, and how not communicating them kindly and effectively and accurately can really hinder our relationships. We've talked about the power of the pause. This can really help in this area as we think about and consider how we want to communicate these things. It's one thing, we talk a lot about healthy boundaries on here, and we talk a lot about living out of our own expectations on here. It is a fundamental to those things are both fundamental in the field framework. They're questions I have you ask yourself and revisit regularly. They're questions I regularly share with our guest on our Thursday episodes. They are questions I want you checking in with yourself on regularly. They're questions that need answers, and they're answers that you give those things need to be communicated. And my oldest daughter talked about this in our top episode from season 1. It was our second episode into the year. And she talked about this later on when she and her then new husband at the time were on with me on the importance of, like, it's one thing to get a boundary set in your head and set with yourself, and you get really excited about it. And then you have to stop and consider, oh boy, now I got to communicate this. And sometimes this communication can be challenging. It can be with people that we're not sure how they're going to receive it, whether it's in personal relationships or our workspaces. But to expect them to know that boundary or expectation has been adjusted, examined, set with some new values and rules to it for you, people aren't just going to know that. It needs to be communicated. In fairness to the whole relationship, it needs to be communicated to them. And I say communication is kind because it lets people know where you're coming from. They're not left to guess. They're not left to wonder. You're not asking them to read your mind, which is impossible anyway. And I think sometimes we just think, oh my gosh, can't they tell I've changed? I've made these decisions. I've moved to this space. I've changed this way that I socialize and interact, and the people that I do it with. I've changed jobs, whatever it is. And we're like, can't they see? And it's like, if it doesn't have a direct impact on them, they may not see, they may not understand. And so assuming that they will without you actually communicating directly to them isn't fair to anyone. It leaves you frustrated, and it's not fair to them to expect them to second guess. And we, so many times, especially when we're worried about the communication or it's a conversation that we feel like is going to be hard, we want to blame them for not seeing you or not understanding you when in fact you haven't taken the time to communicate. So it's such an important element. And if you need help with this, I have resources. Let's get together. I have a great one-on-one empowerment session that's built around this kind of communication with boundaries. We've got great online courses that really pertain to this and talk about this and get into this. Let's get together and talk about it so that you can practice with me and I can help you, because some of these conversations can be really rattling. I think also sometimes we start telling ourselves stories about how these things are going to go. And many times they end up being the truth of it. Once we do it, is it's way less difficult than we thought. Now, that's not always true. I have had both experiences. I've had experiences where they were not received well, and I had to allow myself to not over explain or not apologize when they didn't receive it well. I had to remind myself that this was a boundary that was set to protect my well-being, that to protect me from not abandoning myself for other people's comfort anymore. And so their discomfort wasn't saying that I was doing something wrong or bad or inappropriate or unkind or selfish. It's the first time they're hearing this from you when it's been this big of an adjustment. So their initial response may not feel the way you want it to feel. That doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It was still the right thing to communicate it, because if you don't communicate it, then those people are going to continue to expect the same things from you, ask the same things from you. Then you're going to get frustrated, wonder why they keep asking you. They keep asking you because you haven't clearly communicated them. I no longer go to that book club. It's not aligning with my values anymore. It's not filling my cup anymore. I need to get to bed earlier in the evening, and I had to make a choice between my sleep and that book, of whatever the reason is, the communication piece. And then, they may be disappointed about that. They may not be getting something from you that they want anymore. They may just miss you. They may just need some time to adjust to it. Those that love us and want what's well for us, they can love us and still not love it. If people haven't done their own work to understand the difference between healthy boundaries and codependent relationships, healthy boundaries and enmeshed relationships, healthy boundaries and this idea that you show up for somebody no matter what, even if it means you're abandoning yourself. If they don't understand that or believe that or have done that work, they're going to have a hard time with this. Again, not a reflection on you, a reflection of where they are. So this is why practicing it with someone and having an accountability partner, and that's what really drove this idea behind me starting to create these empowerment session options and this online course, because it can be really difficult if you don't have someone to practice this with, remind you of your value, remind you that you get to choose you. And choosing you is not selfish. If you continue to abandon yourself and not set these healthy boundaries and expectations and communicate them, then that piece is leaving you behind. And so, but again, going back to, we're honing in on the communication piece today. The communication piece is so important to me that I've actually considered adding it as another bullet point to cover in the FEEL framework. I haven't officially done that, but I always come back to it because you can set all the boundaries and expectations with yourself and jot them down in your journal if you want. If you haven't communicated to them, then one, you're not fully committing yourself to it, because you have the fallback of like, well, they just didn't respond very well, or they aren't recognizing what I've done. And it's you communicating and continuing to communicate and remind them, because also when you set a new boundary or realign your expectations to align with who you are, if it's new, they may forget a few times. And those boundaries and expectations that you've set out may get tested. And you may have to reiterate that to them a couple of times. I kind of have a 3-time rule. Once you get to the 3rd time of that same thing, then I come back with, this is a conversation we've had. This is the 3rd time in the last 3 weeks or 3 months or 2 days that we've had it. I want to be very clear This is not a boundary that I'm going to back off from. This is not an expectation I'm going to change. Um, and so I hope that you can support and understand that, and also know this is not shifting. So please do not continue to ask me to do things that violate this expectation or boundary, or be places, or this is, you continuing to ask me to do things I've clearly stated to you I will or won't do anymore isn't going to shift on this. And so I hope that you'll take the time um, to respect that of me. And so, that it can get to that. It can also be like, oh, well, I was hoping you would do that anyway. So great. I'm glad to hear you've made that decision for yourself. I think that's really smart. Or, oh gosh, I thought that was just something you enjoyed doing. Thank you so much for letting me know it isn't. I'm happy to find someone else that can cover that, or be that, take that role, or have that responsibility. Many times it's that. And you're like, oh, well, I built this thing up in my head and I thought this person was going to be so disappointed. And they were actually like, oh, I just thought it was something you wanted to do. And that's what it comes to. We teach people how to treat us. And so much of that is by what we allow, and what we do when they ask, and how we proceed, and whether we over-explain or apologize when we are simply advocating for ourselves because we think it might have made them uncomfortable. Many times they're like, oh, well, that's no problem. We can fix that. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I built all this whole story up in my head, and this actually went really smoothly. Other times, not so much. I mean, I've had relationships shift in my life because of boundaries and expectations that have shifted within me that I'm living by. And I've had to own that there may be some shifts, but that I will no longer engage in relationships that ask me to abandon myself, that ask me to compromise on what I know is healthy for me, that ask me to violate the safety my nervous system is screaming at me is not safe for me. I won't put myself in those positions anymore. So that has made some shifts. I have no regrets about that, because I feel the difference in my body. I feel the difference in my health. I don't feel that nudge in my gut anymore that I'm abandoning myself for someone else's comfort and continuing to compromise what's well for me. I know that I'm surrounded by people and spaces that support that and want what's well for me. And I'll continue to do that. And it's something I should have done, done and communicated many, many years ago. So there is many facets to it. But that idea that, oh my gosh, I do the dishes every night and I make all the lunches and no one ever asks me if I need help. That's not fair. If you need help, communicate that you need help. If you don't ask for help, they're going to assume no matter how many cupboards you slam or how many heavy sighs you take, I'm coming from my own experience here. This is something I've been guilty of the past, or how many doors you slam, which is very unhealthy and very passive aggressive. And I'm very guilty of that in my past. So I can speak to that honestly. They're not mind readers. They're just going to think, oh, she had a bad day. Oh, she's tired, whatever. If you need help, communicate that you need help and don't apologize or over-explain for it. But don't expect people to know you need something, or something's weighing on you, or something no longer aligns with you, or something's exhausting you if you haven't taken the time to sit down with them and communicate it clearly. So I think this is so important. Jessica Garrison, my writer and author here at the Embracing Layers Network, she does all the blogs here for the Field podcast. She's was the key author on our book. She writes our newsletters. She's just really, really insightful. And she does a blog the day before every episode. So every Monday and Wednesday, a blog drops from her. I highly recommend you read those blogs before you come into these conversations, whether it's one-on-one empowerment sessions with me or whether it's our Thursday conversations. She has such great insights. She really gets your mind ready for the conversations. And she also gives great ways to engage as you're listening to the content or after the content. I'm going to read a couple of excerpts that she has in her blog this week that are so spot on, that they're so well. And I really recommend you go back. It's on our Substack. It's on our website. And I would tell you that one of the great things about being a paid subscriber on our Substack is you can go back into our archives, anything older than 3 months, our blogs, our newsletters, our book clubs, our past radio shows, our past episodes, and conversations and panels and all these things that are archived that had been on our Substack. You can get access to all of those. You can look up all kinds of topics, whether it's a monthly themed topic around women's safety and health, or holidays, or anything like that. There's so much gold in there. So one of the key components, but I wanted to highlight Jess because she does great work for us and she really sets these conversations up well. She's got a couple of things here, like I said, in the blog that I want to share. So this goes into like what I was talking about just a few minutes ago with communicating the expectations. This one is more of a work one, but it's a really great example. So she says, for example, let's say that you have decided to make Mondays a day with no meetings whatsoever. It's a new boundary. You're starting because you want more time to get work done in the office, but your coworkers won't be aware of this change until you tell them. They'll continue to ask for a meeting Monday, not because they're trying to disrespect your boundaries, but because they don't know about them. These conversations can show up in a multitude of ways, but this is just one simple example to help you think of ways you can communicate boundaries and expectations in your own life. It might take some time, or some people may not be receptive to them, but you have to at least communicate with them so everyone can be on the same page and have the same information. It's at that point people will show themselves to you as an actual supporter or someone who's just using you for personal gain. And that's especially true for those ones that you're having to tell multiple times. Like I said, I give everybody a grace period of a couple of times because they're not used to it. Once you get to times 3 and 4, then it starts to be like, this person may not be for this or for me. They might not even consciously understand that. It just may be a way they're so used to you showing up in a way that serves them that they're unwilling or unable and consciously to release that, but it still tells you that story. So let's say this is a new boundary for you. You just closing your door and saying, well, I've got my door closed so they know I'm not available. That's an assumption. If they see your door closed, they just may simply knock on your door. And then you're like, why are they knocking my door? I have my door closed. No, you've got to communicate. You communicate this. Hey, I'm not taking meetings on Monday anymore. I'll keep my door closed to keep it quiet for me. And so as a reminder to you, but if you just close your door and don't communicate anything about that, you expecting them to not knock on your door because you've decided you're not taking meetings on Monday is not a fair expectation if you haven't had a conversation. So I thought that was a really great example. She goes on to say in this last paragraph, and she's got such a smart sentence here that I absolutely love. We teach people how to treat us, and how can they learn without your assistance, without you communicating what you will and won't do, what you will and won't tolerate, where you will and won't show up, conversations you will and won't participate in, when X factor comes into play. It can feel selfish or mean at first, but above all else, communication is kind. And I said that at the outset. Communication is kind. She says something else in here that I absolutely love. I got to try to find it. And I commented on it when she shared this with me. Oh, here it is. A closed mouth doesn't get fed. The more you communicate your needs, the more empowered, respected, and aligned your life becomes. You find out the spaces you're safe in. You find out who your people are. All those things come into place, fall into place. So this is why this is such an important part of this. This is why communicating boundaries is just as important as setting them. If you set them, that's step one, very important. But if you don't communicate them, it also doesn't empower you or push you forward in actually enacting them. We can use that as a crutch or an excuse. Well, they just won't listen. They just won't respect it. Did you communicate it to them? Did you sit down and have a conversation that there's been a shift? And we can give, I think this is where we have to be careful when we're communicating these new boundaries. Explain and give reasons behind it if if but keep it simple. Don't move into over explaining. If they seem like they're uncomfortable with it, don't move into, I'm sorry this makes you uncomfortable. No. You can simply say, I know this is new. And I empathize with the fact that this could be difficult for you to hear the first time. I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of reflection. I've stepped back to really examine the areas that I am honoring myself and the areas that I'm not honoring myself and what's healthy for me and what my nervous system is telling me is unhealthy. In some ways, I need to rethink the way I'm spending my time and giving my space. I know it's not what you used to. I'm asking you to trust me in this and trust me that I'm making choices that are healthy for me. Full stop. No more. Da, 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 da. I know this is going to mean this. I know da, 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 da. No, full stop. Full stop. That's your explanation. And when, again, expressing these expectations and these new boundaries without guilt or fear, you might, because that's your default, is to feel guilty when someone else is uncomfortable by a decision you've made or bothered by it. It's going to take a while to practice these things. It took me about a year and a half when I was really where I'd really made some shifts, where some things I just wasn't going to, spaces and places and people I wasn't going to put myself in front of intentionally anymore because of the way it impacted me. I felt guilty for about a year and a half, and I second guessed and did a lot of inner talk of, did I not explain it clearly enough? Do they not understand? I finally came to this, after about a year and a half of this, going back and forth, like, no, they can come to me with curiosity and ask more questions if they have them. I don't need to over-explain or apologize. If they genuinely care about me and want to know and want to understand, then they can come back to me and ask questions. And at that time, I can answer those questions in a way that's honoring to me. And if it's a question that isn't honoring to me or is just trying to pull me back in, I can simply say, I'm going to go back to what I said initially. I'm going to ask you to trust me on this. I know it's, it is causing you some discomfort. I'm going to ask you to trust that I know what's healthy for me. And then that's it. But they can be curious too. We don't carry the whole burden. And there's just some people in spaces we're not going to convince about these things. But it does take time. It does take time for your nervous system to adjust to these new ways you're showing up. It does take, any unlearning or any habit that we are changing takes time, takes practice. So be patient with yourself and don't let that guilt or fear deter you. It's just reminding you, if you go back to that simple question, if I go back on this, am I abandoning myself? Am I abandoning my values? What I know is actually safe and well for me? The answer is yes, you will be. Then the answer is no, I won't do that. And I will continue to be patient. I will continue to trust myself. And I trust that over time, everything will settle and the guilt and fear will subside. And it'll become clear what's healthy and not healthy and who's healthy and not healthy for me. The role of healthy communication in relationships is, again, I go back, I've said it 3 times up, but communication is kind. We cannot expect people to be mind readers. It requires sometimes hard conversations. But if we want the relationship to continue to evolve and grow and meet each other where we are, communication, healthy communication, consistent communication is absolutely key. And over time, we build confidence as we continue to communicate these boundaries, and especially as we start experiencing the impact of that on our health, our well-being, our mindset, our bodies settling in. We're like, oh gosh, this really is effective. This really was important. I really did make healthy decisions for myself when I made this shift. That confidence really comes over time as we start trusting how we're feeling. The trust in ourselves builds. And accountability and personal growth happen through honest dialogue. Communicating healthy boundaries and expectations is an account. We have the responsibility. We are accountable to do that. It is unaccountable and not holding ourselves accountable and setting it up to try to make others the problem when we don't communicate that. So communicating that is necessary, it's accountable. It also is like, oh, I really am. If I'm going to set this boundary and expectation, then I for it to actually take hold and be real, I need to actually live by it. And by living and communicating it holds you accountable to actually live by it. And like I said, you're going to find out people can be surprisingly supportive and respond in a really like way that you didn't see coming when you communicate your needs. Many times people that genuinely care about it, I'm so happy to see you taking care of yourself in this way. I'm so proud of you for choosing you. And this can come from places you expect. And sometimes it can come from people. I've had situations where the people I expected to rise up and really support me didn't. But on the flip side, people I never saw coming showed up in ways that I never imagined and were game changers for me. So give people the opportunity to show themselves to you. Communicating allows that to happen rather than us making assumptions. This also helps you honor your relationships with honor. And it also it gives you an insight when someone's communicating a boundary or expectation to you, then you can remember, okay, what was it that I needed when I was on the other side of this? What even if it's something that's hard for you to hear, you can remember, okay, if this were me in her shoes, or this was me 3 weeks ago when I was trying to communicate something like this, what did I need at the time? Sometimes this is again where that pause can come into play. Pause, like, thanks so much for communicating that to me, and just pause and give it 24 hours. If you're on the flip side of someone communicating something to you that you know is hard for them and a big shift for them, don't just necessarily jump into questions or questioning them. Take a pause, get curious, and say, is there something within me that's been triggered that I need to address, rather than me making their boundary or new expectation the problem? What is coming up in me that I need to address, where it's actually something that I need to take care of, I need to reflect on? And this just triggered it for me. So that pause when you're the one receiving that information is really key here too, to really stop and get curious about what's coming up for you. And if it's a question that really does need to be asked of them the next day or 2 days after you've paused, if you feel like it's important to get more information, or if it's just letting you know, oh gosh, maybe this is something I need to think about too. And when they communicated that boundary or expectation to me, it actually triggered that within something I need to work on, rather than being something that they shouldn't be doing. So it's really important, if you're on the receiving end of this communication, take that pause and reflect before you jump into any responses or questions about it. And that also sets you up with each other as being safe people. When we may not always understand or agree with people's expectations or boundaries, but as long as that expectation or boundary isn't putting them in any kind of physical danger or safety issues, then we need to be really mindful of the questions we ask about that, and make sure that we're honoring that in the way that we would want ours to be honored. And this is why communication is kind. It's not selfish. It's giving information. It's letting people know where you are. It's being willing to listen to where other people are. And so this practical ways to start it with these really small things is start with something that seems really doable. Like, okay, I'm no longer going to show up for that 5 a.m. workout with you. I need an hour of sleep. There's a lot going on right now. So I'm not going to show up for that 5 a.m. workout anymore. I've shifted. I'm going to work out at home instead, or I'm going to work out after work or at noon. If you'd like to join me for that, great. I hope you understand and support that, and listening to that. And they're like, oh, okay, I understand. I'll miss you, but I get it. Starting it with something that's kind of like not big stakes, like absolutely, that you're, that with someone that feels safe. And then that's a great way to strengthen those things, and having someone to practice with. Again, I go back, let's get together. I do free 30-minute empowerment sessions to talk about what it is you need. So let's get together for that 30 minutes. Maybe in that 30 minutes, I'm able to practice with you enough that you feel safe and ready to go. If not, I've got other resources that we can talk about. But that accountability piece and having someone to practice these more difficult conversations with can be really helpful. Journaling, writing down what you want to say in advance can be really helpful. Having those notes. Do it face to face when you can. Sometimes these things need to be done in an email because it allows you to non-emotionally get it written out. If that's the case, then give them an opportunity to come back with questions, to maybe set up a phone call down the road where you have communicated it. It's out there now. Everyone has time to absorb it. Let's come back and revisit with questions. That doesn't mean you're over explaining or apologizing, but it does allow for any kind of response. And it may simply be the person say, gosh, I'm so glad you communicated this to me. This is so great. If I have any questions, I'll reach out. So that can be effective. Don't use it as a way to dodge a hard conversation. But if it's an emotionally charged conversation where you want to make sure you're getting all the facts out and laid it out in a way that's concise and honoring, and giving them a chance to absorb it before you have the conversation about it, that can be really effective too. Going back to what Jessica said, remember, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. The more you communicate your needs, the more empowered, respected, and aligned your life becomes. Your ways to engage this week are this. Think about your expectations and boundaries. Think about the last time you properly communicated them. Does there need to be an update? Choose someone close to you, a safe person, and try communicating these things to them. Get practice, even starting small if you need to. I gave you some examples of what that could look like, and start working towards a greater scale to become more confident in your abilities, in your voice, and in the fact of this is an important component of taking care of yourself well and taking care and honoring the relationships well and having the relationships in your life that are honoring to you and you're honoring to each other. I hope this is helpful. I know I went a little longer today on this, but I feel like this, if you can set all the boundaries and expectations in the world, if you're not communicating them to people, then you've only done part of it. And this is a key component in you actually moving forward and acting on these things you've set and being accountable to them and showing up the way that you know is honoring to you. Take good care of yourselves. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember that you are valuable, you are worthy, and you get to choose. We'll see you next time here on the Field Podcast.